We're at one of the most crucial crossroads in the history of humanity. We're, we're straddling the fence between the third density, physically connected realm of the intellect and the fifth density, more energetically connected realm of the spirit. For us to move from the place of the intellect, where we see ourselves as just a mere meat suit, towards the place where we recognize our role as co-creators with matter, we must realize that we can no longer rely on just the intellect alone. In fact, what is required is a synthesis of the intellect with both the soul and spirit. It's becoming crystal clear that we need way more than merely the intellect to move us from this physically connected construct towards a more spiritually connected one where we become more energy and way less matter. I believe that in order to move away from the physical towards a place where we can finally accept that we are the conscious creators of our own reality, we need to first rediscover the construct of both spirit and soul once again. Let me give you a bit of background here. During the first half of human revolution, we experienced the devolution of spirit as it entered matter. This was in fact the beginning of humanity living in a world of stuff, greed, pride, and then having a need to be recognized for any positions or wealth that they held. In order for us to move to the second half of human revolution, in other words, where we ascend in our physical form, requires us to now reverse the process where spirit entered matter previously. Now what we need to do is we need to use our spiritual side to raise matter up to actually meet spirit. This is a crucial step if we want to ascend from the third to the fifth density while still in physical form. During the first half of human revolution, we used spirit to glue everything related to matter together. In other words, we created a very dense world filled with physical matter, which has great importance for our status and ego, and due to our programming, we were also manipulated into no longer believing in the spiritual side of who we are, but rather relied on just the intellect and science to guide us. In the first half of human revolution, guys, what we've done is we've lost sight of what's really important, namely love, community, family, empathy, and abundance for absolutely everybody. So for us to break free from straddling this fence, we need to travel to a place where we can step over the fence into the second half of human revolution. In other words, we move from the third density through the fourth density and we arrive at the fifth density. So in order to do this, we need to create an effective pathway where we can synthesize the intellect so that we can basically merge it again with both our spirit and our soul. How do we do this? Well, this starts with the small things. We got to start doing small things such as rebuilding the nuclear family, creating meaningful community. We need to move away from all of those artificial institutions, which were never about community in the first place, but were rather designed as mechanisms to control humanity. These organizations merely represent community on paper and serve as a control mechanism for the deep state. And there's no meaningful connection to the people that they're actually meant to serve. Let's understand how they removed spirit from our psyche. So as we've removed spirit from our experience, we've lost the I in the I am that I am, part of who we actually are as humans. The I am that I am spiritual or God consciousness part of our experience serves many incredible functions, the least of which, guys, is our intuition, which we're meant to utilize for guidance, inspiration, and when we're co-creating. So as we regain connection or our connection to spirit once again, and we reconnect with the I in the I am that I am of God consciousness, we'll begin to positively transform ourselves so that we can begin to move away from our dependency on the physically connected construct, and we can begin to regain our inner standing of who we really are. Understanding how humanity was manipulated into creating this world of lack, famine, and war, which is alien to human nature, guys. And I know when you look around your world, you're going to believe that humanity is violent, aggressive, and very insensitive, but nothing could be further from the truth. At the spiritual and soul level, most humans, guys, are loving and generous and incredibly caring. The violence, greed, and heartless actions that you're observing in your community or in your environment are all learned behaviors, or should I rather say, humanity's been manipulated or mind controlled into performing these kind of behaviors, which, guys, as you know, are completely alien to human nature. I've dug really, really deeply into this in a number of previous videos, so I'm not gonna do much more here to try to explain it, guys, other than state that the deep state has used a number of very nefarious methods to both control and enslave humanity in the past. They've been rolling out a multi-generational plan over thousands of years with the absolute aim of controlling humanity completely. Guys, as you know, the deep state has been extremely sly, and over time, using various institutions such as the church, which they basically infiltrated really successfully, they've gradually moved us away from being spiritually connected sentient beings to a place where we see ourselves as, and isn't it crazy? We actually refer to it. I've used this term myself. We call ourselves human machines. Isn't it crazy? So let me give an example of what I'm talking about here. In the early days, when the Khazarian Mafia's plans were kind of in their infancy, humanity was referred to as the children of God. And then once they manipulated humanity in the West, because there's definitely is a split between the East and the West as far as spirituality is concerned. In the West, they manipulated us into believing that we only had bodies and souls, because in 869, humanity, from that moment on, once they removed spirit from humanity, we were then referred to as sophisticated animals. Once they removed the construct of soul from humanity's consciousness, which then happened in 1878, they've continued to indoctrinate in us into referring to humanity now as an exotic machine. Isn't it crazy? How has humanity moved from being referred to as the children of God to a place now where we freely refer to humanity as an exotic machine? What happened over the years where we were called the children of God, then we were called a sophisticated animal, and now we're an exotic machine? What's going on here? Well, guys, this has been a very carefully orchestrated multi-generational plan which was imposed on humanity by the Khazarian Mafia, or what we now refer to as the deep state. I know this is going to cause you to suffer from massive cognitive dissonance, guys, as what I'm about to tell you is going to seem so incredibly unbelievable. But here goes. The Khazarian Mafia, guys, have had a eugenics and transhumanism agenda for thousands of years. They've effectively infiltrated all of humanity's power structures, starting with the church and the royal families of Europe. And over the years, guys, this control has culminated in them controlling all of the power structures on earth today. They literally control everything. They control school boards all the way up to national government level. They've also effectively, over the millennia, gained control of everything, including the judiciary, military, financial, medical, food, big pharma, mainstream media, big business, farming, etc. They literally control absolutely everything. So how did they remove spirit from humanity's experience? So after infiltrating the Catholic Church, like they do very well, they began to initiate their generational plan for world domination and absolute control of humanity. They initiated this plan in 869, and in fact it happened at the Council of 869 in Constantinople, where they banned the construct of spirit altogether. And then in 1878, they went one step closer to desensitizing humanity towards accepting transhumanism by removing the construct of soul from the human paradigm altogether. How crazy is that? So many of us, guys, at the moment are straddling the fence with one foot planted in the third density and a second either planted in the fourth, or even in some cases, even the fifth density. As you know, in the third density, guys, we've been manipulated into believing that we are merely these meat suits which die one day, or said differently, When the physical body ceases to exist, so does the ego or our thinking selves. That's what we've been manipulated to believe. It's incorrect. After the Council of 869, it was forbidden to speak of spirit as an autonomous real-time function at all. In fact, anyone who went against this directive was immediately excommunicated from the church. So it was a very, very serious offense. What this did was it resulted in the separation of both the Western and Eastern philosophies. The East, as you know, still recognize spirit, and to this day, they still do. This fact, guys, can be observed by how cultures in Japan, India, and China have over the centuries embraced the construct of meditation, and they've also remained engaged with the spiritual side of humanity, whilst the Western religions have removed the construct of spirit completely from all of their religious doctrines. I believe that this is the reason that so many of us free thinkers have become so disillusioned by the dogma of all the religious sects in the West, and is also the reason why most of us have felt the way we do. We're way more comfortable referring to ourselves as spiritual rather than religious beings. So I guess you're wondering, why did the Khazarian Mafia remove spirit and the soul from our experience? What was the point? Guys, spirit was banned after the Council of 869 as the first step towards gaining way more control over humanity and to move us one step closer to accepting that we're not spiritual or sentient or even eternal beings, but rather that we're just these ridiculous physically connected meat suits. To achieve this, the construct of spirit, or the sentient side of who we as humanity are, was demonized and replaced with a vertical control system of duality, namely, they introduced the construct of heaven and hell. This was done to allow the church to wield a very, very large stick, namely one which stated that if you tithed and did as the church told you, you would live an incredible future. You would have an eternal life of eternal love in heaven after you died. But if you didn't do as you were told, you would then be condemned to an eternity of pain and suffering and damnation in hell. How we believe this nonsense, I have no idea. Their goal has always been to remove humanity's belief in creation and God, so that we could initially rely only on science and logic, and over time, because remember they do this generationally, we could be manipulated into accepting transhumanism as well. This move started in the 14th century where, as per their generational plan, they started introducing the construct of horizontal dualism, where they introduced now something slightly different. This is called the Cartesian split. In other words, they introduced a very, very limited construct for humanity where they, how crazy were we, where they convinced us that we experience only internal and external phenomena and there's nothing else in between. What this did was it effectively disconnected humanity from God and moved us towards our dependence on our intellect and a ridiculously unhealthy reliance on science. Let's explore the reduction and minimalization of soul. So the removal of soul from our conscious belief system effectively moved humanity away from knowing that we are eternal beings and moved us to a place where we now only see ourselves as this ridiculous physical meat suit which we inhabit, which when it dies and kind of rots away, it disappears and just turns back to dust. Let's think for a moment now what it's going to require, what we have to do to step over that fence. In other words, to move from the third to the fifth density. Humanity is at a massive crossroads at the moment. If they choose transhumanism over God, in other words, God who's the source of all creation, they're going to be moved, or should I rather say, they're going to travel on a very different timeline to the rest of us. I believe that the timeline which the folk who won't accept that we are indeed the children of God once again is defined by the Armageddon timeline. All the info that I can find in respect of the Armageddon timeline points to the fact that the Armageddon timeline ends on the 21st of December 2045. Guys, I really want you to conduct your own research in this respect using non-Google search engines, which I'm going to place in the comments below. I've got 12 or 13 of these search engines, which I'll place in the comments below. Please research this construct thoroughly yourself. So those folks who accept that we are indeed the children of God and begin taking action daily to do the following. Act in service to others. They invest time into their own spiritual and consciousness growth. They do not subject themselves to any medical procedure such as a jab. But guys, I just want to add something here, that I've got some unconfirmed info to hand, guys, which states that anyone who got jabbed without their informed consent will be helped to remove the nanobots and black goo in the future, right? But like I said, it's unconfirmed. So there may be some hope for people who have been jabbed. Guys, the other thing you need to do is start to pray daily. You want to meditate daily. So what is prayer? Prayer is speaking to God, and meditation is listening. You want to reconnect with your I am presence. Guys, you got to sun gaze daily. You want to expose a large piece of skin to the sun for a minimum of 30 minutes every day. And you're also, very important, guys, you want to use those protocols to remove those nanobots and other nasties from your body. You got to decalcify your pineal gland. Demonstrate gratitude daily and make time to let go and just let be. Stop consuming flesh. Drink fluoride-free water. Eat only organic food. You want to use herbs for great health. And don't forget, exercise daily and invest time in nature daily if you can. Those folks who do commit to becoming children of God once again will move onto the Ascension timeline as defined by the book of Sarah. The book of Sarah is one of the 711 books of the Bible that were removed. What I want to share with you, which is really important, is the future for humanity is absolutely unbelievable. I believe the war is won, and if you think of it in terms of a chess match, guys, you know, in a chess match, you get to a point in the game where there's still a couple of moves left, but there's absolute certainty as to the outcome. In other words, you will win, you will checkmate the other player, but there's still a couple of moves that the player has got to play before the game is over. So I wouldn't go as far as saying it's all over. I'm certain we're going to win the war, but there's a lot of small battles and things that still need to be fought. We're basically facing a group who for millennia has not had anyone stand against them, not in any meaningful fashion anyway. They've always been extremely dominant, and they've always been able to use their positions of power, their positions of authority, etc., to manipulate, control, and make things go the way they want to. So they're in very, very uncharted territory at the moment. They're in a place where they're losing. They're on the back foot. So they are literally at this point extremely desperate. They're like cornered animals. They're throwing absolutely everything that they've got left back at us. Very important to remember, guys, their last stronghold is the Ukraine, and I guess Israel, but Israel less so. I mean, Israel is in at a point now where the citizens are standing up. So Israel will be left to last. But once Ukraine goes, and in fact, even David Rockefeller himself stated that once Ukraine goes, the New World Order is dead. And that's exactly where we are at the moment. Is the New World Order is dead. Agenda 2021 is over. Agenda 2030 will never happen. We are on a path at the moment with all the BRICS countries now asset backing their currencies, or gold backing their currencies. There is just so many beautiful things happening in the world at the moment. All the signs that I see shows that we are on track to the most beautiful, incredible future.